We've talked about the Spears sequence, the terms. We've defined and explained the terms a little bit more. Now we're going to take a look at how Spears works. You know, in my practice and working with a lot of different people, I find that everybody has the same stimuli in life. The same situations happens in everybody's life. But certain people respond to them a lot differently and a lot better than others do. And that's where the strategy is important. So instead of being reactive to life, we become more proactive to life. When you have a strategy to understand what's going on and to put it in sequence and to be able to attack it, to analyze it, to assess it after you're done with your response, those people are going to be much more successful when they can be proactive with addressing their stimuli rather than reactive. So now we're going to look at the Spears process, and we're going to put it into play and see how this sharp spear can allow you to attack stimuli and be proactive to be successful in the decisions that you make. Now, before we get into how Spears is applied, I want to talk about some ways that it's misused or misapplied, or that reactive process occurs. The Spears process, all of these elements of Spears are in every single decision. But the way they get misused a lot of times is people don't pay attention to all these 6 different key components of the Spears process and leave them out or really undermine their potential power in the Spears process. So for most of us, we sort of are pretty aware of the response element. So there, we respond in some way. There's some habit or there's some positive response that we're very aware of, whether it's being able to say thank you to somebody, being able to forgive somebody, being cut off on the street and giving a vulgar sign language to somebody, yelling at our kids. We're pretty aware of the responses. So oftentimes we think that's the only process, that's the only element in the decision-making process is response. When we slow it down a little bit, we realize, oh, well, that just didn't come out of a vacuum. It just didn't happen out of the blue. There was some stimuli that led to that response. So somebody cut me off, and then I wanted to yell at them. When we slow it down a little bit more, we realize, oh, yeah, there's a stimuli and the response, but there was also some feeling or some emotion in between. So there was a stimulus. Somebody said something to me. Somebody yelled something at me. Somebody said, hey, look, I want to have a meeting with you later. And then I felt nervous or worried, and then I avoided them, or I yelled at them back. So there's a stimuli, emotion, and response. Where we have trouble with this, applying the Spears process, is those in-between steps, the ones in between stimuli and emotion and response, are perception, assessment, and summary thought. And those are 3 thinking steps. And a lot of times, because our mind can work so fast, and because we don't really pay attention, and we're not good at being good stewards of our thinking world and our thinking process, we sort of blow by those really quickly. So we're not aware of how are we perceiving that situation, or how am I assessing my options? What are my options, and what are the pros and cons of those options? Or, very importantly, at the end, that summary thought, well, what just happened there? How did I respond? What do I need to do to respond better or differently or in a more healthy way in the future? Now, sometimes some of us are a little bit more emotionally oriented, so we think that there's an emotion. We get angry at something, we feel lonely about something, we feel nervous or fearful about a particular situation. And then we have a response, and then we have a thought to take a look at that situation. And we totally forget about the stimulus and our initial perception of the situation, and we just think that the emotion, whether positive or negative emotion, we think the emotion is the first step in the Spears process. So I'm going to go through some examples now of just some situations that have happened in my life and some decisions that I made, some responses, and just break it down and go through the whole process: stimulus, perception, emotion, assessment, response, and summary thought. And then there's very important elements that help understand where my lenses are, what's forming my lenses, and how I'm assessing things. Greatest perceived threat, greatest perceived need, life depends on, confidence, and motivation. Now, the biggest problem of doing it, the way I used to do it, my old way, the sort of I-centered way of doing things, is that Satan really wants to distort our lenses and distort our emotional understanding in the process. And the biggest difficulty in the decisions I used to make and the way I used to make decisions, and still infiltrate whenever I make poor decisions now, is being able to really have a good understanding of my, what are my greatest perceived need, my greatest perceived threat, life depends on, where I get my confidence from, and where I get my motivation. Now, those things come from various different struggles, that happened earlier in my life, in childhood mostly, and teenager, young adult life. And so as I go through these examples, I'm going to try to flesh those out so that you have a better understanding of those particular issues and how they play into, a particular decision that I'm going to give an example of. Now, the reason why those things that form our lenses, a greatest perceived need, greatest perceived threat, life depends on, confidence, motivation, the reason why we really struggle with those is because, in our old way of making decisions, in our dysfunctional or struggling way, those elements, we look at them with respect to, I'm the only one that really knows how to take care of me. I'm the only one that really loves me. I'm the only one that really cares for me. I'm the only one that it really matters what happens to me in my life. So we take it all upon us as the only resource, the only understanding, the only wisdom, the only guidelines, the only agenda that needs to be met in a particular situation. And as we see in these examples, you'll find how faulty, that reasoning is in the process. Now, the first example I'm going to give you, the stimulus, is going back to my high school days, back, like 10th, 11th grade. And in high school, say I'd hear people telling a dirty joke. We're hanging out in the hall, and I hear somebody telling a sexual, perverted kind of joke in the hallway that, teenage boys are apt to do. So the stimulus is hearing this dirty joke being told. Now, my perception is I hear a lot of laughter going on. I hear a lot of connection, people being valued, people being looked upon as being important or comical or endearing to other people. So I'm sort of perceiving that element. Now, as I take a look deeper at my, those things that form my lenses, I look at my greatest perceived threat and greatest perceived need. My greatest perceived need is, I want to be accepted. I want to feel important. I want to be part of the inner circle there. I have a need to be liked and to be valued by the group of people in the situation. My greatest perceived threat, on the flip side, is not being accepted, being rejected, being abandoned, not being the center of attention, not looking like a better joke than the one that's being told. You see, for me, again, going back to my childhood, earlier childhood, moving around a lot was something that happened in my life, and not having that inner circle of friends so close to me because, constantly moved around, was something that was a loss for me, that I didn't have. So wanting to be included, wanting to be a part of that inner circle, wanting to feel important to other people, have other people care for me, I could care for them, that was real important to me. So when I'd hear a joke like this being told and I saw the camaraderie and the connection that it allowed some people to have, and I felt sort of on the outside of that, that was something that was threatening to me, not being in there, and that was something that I needed, to be in. So life depended on me being part of that inner group, part of that getting attention, whether that was going to be, laughing at the person telling the joke, or jumping in with, another dirty joke or some other details that might enhance it or make it funny. That was something that life depended on me jumping in there to be able to be part of that camaraderie and that connection, that importance, that center of attention that was happening during that joke.